Today, we're talking about VAT, people. The government clarified for us over the weekend that the proposed increment in VAT is not 7.2%, but rather 7.5%. Before this, Nigerians were already speaking so loudly about the increment. Many people saying, no way. You cannot increase VAT. Why? What for? Today we're looking at the proposed increase in value-added tax, and we're having this conversation for the next 1 hour. You can join us on Facebook and Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. We're also live on YouTube. You can watch us live on Facebook and YouTube, especially Nigeria Info FM. On Twitter, use the hashtag #Crossfire when you join this conversation. Our WhatsApp number is also open. We'll try to read as many of your comments as we can. The number is 08095 975805, 08095 975805. You are welcome to the show. I'm Wemimo Adewuni.
I'm Sheriff Quadry. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. Thank you for joining us again. Let's have this conversation, shall we? We have in the studio Gbolahan Olojede, financial analyst, chartered accountant, and economic and public affairs analyst as well. Gbolahan, good morning to you once again.
Yeah, good to be here.
Our resident financial and economic policy expert, Tunji Andrews, joins us right now as well. Tunji, good morning to you.
Yeah, look at that.
How do you know when I got that title? Good morning.
Just say thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So we have two economists in the studio versus you who think that you should not be paying. Some of you don't even want to pay tax at all. So I've tried to bait some of our listeners to say, why don't you want to pay tax?
That's
Some countries pay 25% VAT. It's just 7.2, scratch that, 7.5%. But let's tell you what happened 3 weeks ago, precisely Wednesday, 28th of August, on the Morning Crossfire. We had a conversation on value-added tax imposition on online transactions. This followed the disclosure by FIRS on Monday, 26th August, that it would start charging VAT on online transactions, both domestic and international, with effect from January 2020. And the date of commencement of the VAT on online transactions will be subject, of course, to government approval. Now, the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday, 11th September, approved a proposed increase of VAT from 5% to 7.2%. That was initial agreement. The approval was made while approving 10.07 trillion naira 2020 budget, which was deemed important because, I quote, the states need additional revenue to be able to meet the obligations of the minimum wage, among other needs. However, the Minister of Finance, Budget and Planning said that the proposal is not to 7.2%, rather to 7.5%. And of course, this got more people talking.
Right.
Remember that the government once increased VAT to rate to 10% in 2007, but had to revert to the status quo of 5% following opposition by organized labor. However, some people think the government needs to consider this opportunity because we need money. And we need to generate revenue.
Yeah, and it's an important it's an important step when we talk about how we want to fund the 2020 budget. In some of the headlines, you heard that the federal government plans to generate 2 trillion naira next year if this VAT is implemented, by the government. So welcome to the conversation. Let me start with you, Gbolahan.
Okay. It's a fairly complicated space, not as simplistic as a lot of people think it is. We have a serious. I have seen this long coming. It's been you can smell it from a pipe. We have a very horrible revenue situation. Very, very bad. It's as bad as the entire revenue projection for 2019. If we're able to realize everything, it comes to 6.97 trillion. That is the entire revenue budget for 2019. If we don't, because there are issues about, we are paying too much salary to National Assembly, which I perfectly agree we need to do something about it. There are other wastages here and there. Let's assume that we don't pay them anything. No salary. We will still be extremely poor in revenues. That is how bad things are. Now, when you get to that junction, you have to start thinking, so what do I do as a nation?
Right.
Which is what led us to where we are finally arriving at. The 6.797 trillion that we said is horrible. As at half year, one would expect that, okay, let's even sum it, or let's say it's 7 trillion. Then 3.5 trillion should have been realized in the first 6 months, assuming income is realized evenly across the year. It means by half year, we should have 3.5 trillion accruing to us already.
Right.
We have about 2 trillion. The target for oil production was 2.3 in the budget. We've been doing about 1.8. So things are not good as far as cash flow is concerned. So that is why this government has arrived at the doorstep of VAT. The question is, can VAT solve the problem? One. What are the other options that we have on the table? I know that this same minister initially spoke about 2 things which she probably considered were low-hanging, though I'm not sure they are actually as low-hanging as she presented. One of it was the fuel subsidy, removing fuel subsidy. If you remove that, you probably would drop close to $1 trillion.
That's the largest item on our import list.
Yes. So if you drop that, you can improve the cash flow close to $1 trillion with that. Some people think that is the way to go. Then you can increase VAT. But there is a third option that we're not even looking at all. And for me, it is the lowest hanging fruit. It will require very strong political will, just like the others. The others too require strong political will. But this one requires a stronger political will. And it is the fact that the upper part of the society today are not carrying their fair share of the tax burden in this country. And I will give you a very good picture of that. Some months ago, the FIRS had ordered a lien on certain accounts that these people, there's this volume running in your account, but you've not been paying taxes. Therefore, come and start paying taxes. I'm not sure whether that is the best approach to it, but that was what they did anyway. Now, what happened was that about 9% of those people paid up. When 9% of them paid up, we realized 98 billion naira.
From 9% of them?
From 9% of them. What that says to me is that if we can get to 100%, hypothetically, we will drop 1.1 trillion on the table.
You know, before we get, I know you both are economists. So the conversation, you know, these days has been, do people even understand what VAT is, Tunji? So with what we're doing, it looks very close to sales tax. You know, so what really is the difference between VAT and sales tax? It looks like what we're doing here is a lot of buy, you know, at the close of the deal, you pay this amount on it. Really, what is VAT? Are we calculating it appropriately?
So in Nigeria, what became VAT as of today was a sales tax, was a consumption tax. It evolved into being VAT. VAT basically is value-added tax, and it's supposed to be paid by the final consumer. But in Nigeria, it is paid at every level of value add, which is a proper sales tax. You get, and sales tax usually do not cross 10% across the world. VAT, of course, is different because it's a final add tax. And that's, of course, one of the issues a lot of Nigerians have had with the increase from 5 to 7.2%, because this is not it's going to be paid at every level. So I farm cocoa, I go and sell to person A, the person pays 7.2. The person then takes the cocoa, goes to sell to company 7.2, 7.5, sorry. Then the person then turns it into chocolate. Then
another 7.
He sells to the wholesaler who pays 7.5. Yeah. Wholesaler sells to retailer 7.5. Then sells
the final
to me,
consumer.
So you get the different levels of payment of this 7.5. I think the government needs to properly split the tax so that it's clear what is consumption and what is VAT. And I'm thinking if it is VAT and is the final payment, right, I'm not sure a lot of people would have issues with it. But coming to if the VAT increase itself will create much of a sukkah, I'm still trying to understand the rationale behind it, because I did a bit of thinking over the weekend. So first of all, the increase, if by what we collected last year, if we're going to increase at 2.2%, what it comes to is about 484 billion naira. Now, note that 484 billion naira doesn't holistically belong to the government.
Okay.
Do you understand? So VAT is shared by the 3 tiers of government.
Right. Right.
So what government is going to get at the end of the day is probably like an additional 100 billion naira. So I'm wondering
How is it shared amongst the tiers of government?
I think the state government gets 50%. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So when it comes
I read something like
when
that,
it comes
50%.
to I'm
So
confused.
the state governors would not mind. That's more revenue for them also.
Yes, definitely. They will be excited by it. But then
they are
you,
better
you, you
mind.
want to you want to ask the rationale behind the government. So there's another part where I also thought to put in too. So there's this issue of spreading the tax net,
Right.
and that for me is an issue. And the reason why I say it's an issue is the middle class is already being taxed. Every single person that has a job, you get taxed at.
It's not optional.
It's not. You don't have
It's
a choice.
paid. I mean,
you don't get to
Yeah.
argue with it whether you want to.
it's
not.
drawn from source.
The upper echelon of the society, which is a very small, minute portion of the society, they carry a big bulk. But yeah, those people you already know them. You already see their bank accounts. It's easy to track them. Spreading the tax net means to the informal sector,
Right.
and which of course is the problem I have when you're talking about tax in the informal sector. Taxes are an expression of I give you money, you give me social amenities, you give me
Right.
security,
Right.
education, infrastructure, and the informal sector has already been that sector that creates everything for itself: water, power, infrastructure, security. And then you want to ask these people who have already been heavily taxed, because that's a tax, putting fuel in your gen.
But the formal sector also provides the same. Most companies,
Definitely.
I mean, they provide their own electricity, they provide their own water, they source all of these things themselves, yet they are taxed.
Well, that is true. But you see, they also have a voice because they are informal sector.
Right.
They have a voice to complain. And if you understand tax in anywhere in the world, there's something called tax avoidance. Yeah, is evade. That is the wrong word.
That's a criminal.
Yeah, avoidance is you doing things to make sure you don't pay tax. So, for instance, you do CSR, you do
Smart.
you repair roads,
Right.
Those general things that you could do to remove some tax burden off you. Those guys know it. The companies know how to.
But
do
if
those
those
things.
roads were not bad, there'll be no reason for me to fix them
Boom.
and then ask for a waiver.
Boom,
So
boom. But you see, the informal
they're also
sector,
doing the government a favor by
of
fixing the
course,
roads they
no-
should be
no doubt.
fixing.
It's what Dangote is doing in Apapa,
Right.
right? It's a social amenity, and
Right.
the government has said, okay, we'll waive some tax for you, and it should be.
Right.
But you see, the informal sector is too small and too splintered to be able to come together to say, hey, I'm paying my gen, I'm getting my own water.
I have an issue with the word too small when you talk about the informal sector.
Yeah.
They kind of like they're like the largest sector when it comes to tax not being
but
covered.
it's very unorganized, is what I
Yes,
mean.
yes, a lot disorganized, if I may use the
No,
word.
not disorganized. It's unorganized. It's just they've not realized that they can come together.
So maybe
Who-
this would make them come together if the
So-
government wants to tax them.
The point is, well, let me come to you on this. So we have an informal sector that is so large, and the government is not covering them when it comes to taxation. How can and we all know that there is a lot of money that can be generated from the informal sector.
Certainly.
If you go to our markets, our local markets, they are being heavily taxed by local authorities, the local councils,
Levies.
the chiefs, the bales, the Amoniles, the Yalojas, the Babalojas.
They're
And-
actually
and they-
complaining
and-
that
and
they're
they-
paying a lot
yeah,
of money.
the truth is,
These are lots of money is going away.
Some of
not
those
going
people-
into the government
yeah,
purse.
but you know the reality. Some of these people probably shouldn't even pay any tax. That's the truth. Paying taxes, there are thresholds. There should be thresholds in any society for determining how much an individual pays, or if you should pay anything at all. When I lived in the US, I get tax refunds. After I paid some taxes, somebody looks at it and say, "Oh, it means you overpaid by this, by this, by that," and then they refund something to you.
You collect change.
You collect the check.
Not
So
here.
I also need to re-emphasize something I said before, using an information. The top 1% taxpayers in the US pay close to 40% of the entire taxes. 1% of the society pay close to 40% of the whole individual taxes in the United States.
Right.
You know, and we still live in a country where we have presidential aspirant who said they earn less than 2 million in a year. So when you have a society like that, it must
The person
be
said they earn less than 2 million. in
Oh,
a
you
year.
didn't say that. You don't know who said that?
Who said that?
I'm not sure.
Gbolahan,
we
who
should
said
mention.
that?
No, I'm not going to
No,
mention.
no,
it. I'm just saying that.
That means the person earns like 150,000
A month.
You've heard a statement from FIRS chairman at some point saying, of all the big people in Nigeria, it seems as if only a handful of people pay this much tax. 1 million, but I think the threshold was 10 million tax in a year. And those people are in Lagos. What
Right.
happened to all the other billionaires all over
Right.
the whole place?
So why is it difficult to have luxury tax like you're saying?
No,
Why
not
is it so
necessarily
difficult?
even luxury tax. It's just the normal income tax. If you've made the income, feel good about it to put back into the society.
Let me remind you that in March, there was a hint by the immediate past Minister for Budget and National Planning, Udo Doma, and the executive chairman of the FIRS, Babatunde Fowler, that said, I quote, VAT rate is likely to go up to enable government fund the new minimum wage of 30,000 naira per month, which was approved by the National Assembly. So the government is saying, you want us to pay minimum wage?
We'll pay.
Yeah, we'll pay, but you
when
guys
somebody-
got to fund the payment. Tunji.
Is that the right way
So,
to fund it?
so I think one of the major issues as concerned tax in Nigeria is the clarity of the tax. It's and the multiplicity.
Duplicity.
Yeah, that word.
Because
Of
when you layer
taxes.
them, it's actually duplicity.
Yeah, so you pay taxes. For instance, this VAT, as I've said, it's a consumption tax, and you
Yeah.
pay it at multiple levels. There is also all kinds of taxes you pay to the state government, which is somehow duplicated at the federal level, sometimes somehow duplicated at the local government level. And then you still have other things you're paying for to basically subsidize your living in the society,
Right.
which of course are multiple issues. I think the government, and I thought, honestly, that I thought with Fowler's experience in Lagos, that was the first thing I thought he was going to do at the federal level, to just make it clear, because it's
Make what clear?
taxes, because at the business level, you really need to sit with tax accountants to understand how complicated our tax system is. This goes to this person, that goes.
You
this
remember
one is
the FIRS revenue dropped. This is where all this matter came up. The revenue dropped, and the government summoned
that
him.
was in the time past.
And he
Then
has
they're
explained
asking
that
him
now.
why.
He has-
So
he
it
has
looks like
explained
they're
that.
trying to
He has explained that.
compensate for the drop in revenue, and they're trying to impress the government by saying we can make more if we make people pay more.
Well, I'm not entirely sure this is his decision. This is from the FEC. This is from the Federal Executive
So let me
Council.
tell you who actually instigated this. So this report by the Premium Times, there was a committee
Right.
set up earlier this year, I think about January 9. There was a presidential technical advisory committee which was set up to look into this matter, and it was made up, the committee made up of leading economists from both the public and private sectors, chaired by the Lagos-based economist and managing director, chief executive officer of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck Rwani. And the committee, which was inaugurated in January 9 this year, was mandated to proffer advice on ways to realize alternative sources of raising funds for the implementation of the new minimum wage by the government. The committee submitted its report on March 21 and proposed the increase in VAT from 5% to 7.5% as one of its key recommendations to the government in managing this issue. So there was a technical committee made up of people like you both,
Yeah.
who then sat together and said,
Definitely wasn't people like me.
"You're both economists."
No, well, economists. If economists are pretty much like shoes. They're all the same thing, but they all look different, and they all
and they fit differently.
differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you could have 20 economists in this room, and all 20 will have different views on the same
Right.
issue. So I have very different views to that issue. First of all, we are in a fiscal crisis. And when I say fiscal crisis, we don't have, our revenue has been dropping consistently for the last 8 years. Consistently. Year on year, we've been dropping in terms of revenue. It's going to get worse. And that's because, thank God, I wanted to say thank God, but yeah, it's still thank God. What is happening in the Middle East is happening now. So crude oil
Right.
prices will go up a bit. But before then, we've been struggling to sell our crude oil at the
That's right.
international waters.
That's right.
So revenue has been an issue. Crude oil prices have not been good. Taxes are not exactly great. So the problem is, and you hear somebody like the finance minister recently talking about the fact that we will face medium-term fiscal challenges. And if you know Nigeria well, we never speak ahead of the issue. You get, we're not the country that speaks preemptively, like, in a few years
this will happen.
This will happen, so let's start preparing for it. No, we usually speak when the issue, the fire started burning,
or in past time, and say it was a past government.
So when I hear things like that, I'm worried, because I've seen it coming for a while. When you see the money dropping every year, you kind of get worried, and then when you hear the finance minister say we might face a fiscal challenge, medium-term fiscal challenge in the future, you've seen the budget. 2019 we're almost pretending as if it didn't exist budget-wise. We're just kind of like, yes, we're 2020 budget. We're all pretending.
What happened to 2019?
Ask me. 2019, it's not even fully implemented.
We just passed it when, and now we're 2020 budget, and everybody's acting like, we're playing
amazing,
along.
Like, we're actually planning.
Because the truth is that we don't have money for it. When we as a country are saying we don't have, how much is it, $20 billion or how much? If we don't have that, then there's a problem.
If you're saying that we don't have money, and at the same time you're saying you have issues with this move, I mean, it's...
Well, you see, there are many ways to skin a cat, right? You do not frustrate your most vibrant sectors to try and, because it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, right?
I wouldn't do that.
Nobody would. I mean, one of the ways he has even suggested is taxing the richer part of the society, which of course is a very difficult thing to do.
Would that be asking them to pay more,
No,
or just asking them to
just
pay
pay
promptly?
your share. Just pay
So
your
why
share.
are they not paying? If they're not paying, is the FIRS incompetent?
Because the richer you are, the louder your voice is, and the more you can negotiate. So, for instance, if Wemimo, you didn't pay your tax, the tax authorities will come and, harass you, push you to the side. But if one of those names doesn't pay his tax, they'll probably go with an envoy. Sir, good morning, sir.
Oh, please.
We just came to remind you that you've not paid your taxes.
Are you kidding?
It's just, are we saying we do not know that?
However, we're trying to make money, but we have closed our borders. Gbolahan. So the government is trying to say, let's focus on local production of rice and other things. So let's close the border. It's been closed for about a month now, and we're losing money. A lot of people in the informal sector, as you put it, also have their goods at the borders. They can't bring them in. They can't take them out. So are we actually smart?
Sorry, before I go there.
Yes.
There are a few additional information about VAT that I think is proper to put in the public space.
Okay.
One of it is that we have a list of what is called non-VATable items. And non-VATable items include basic food. That is why nobody charges you VAT when you go to your mile 12. Though some people have interpreted non-basic food as processed food, but something like amala will qualify as processed food. Nobody charges you VAT for buying amala as well. So essentially, basic food is exempted. Pharmaceuticals in the entirety is exempted.
Baby products
is exempted. Medicament, medical equipment, educational materials, commercial vehicles and their spare parts, all these things are totally exempted from VAT. And I think that information is important because it says at the back of that, it seems as if it's something meant not to hurt the lowest rung of the ladder. But there is a pass-down effect which will happen from the people who are paying. The people who are paying also consume the services of the people who are not paying. And when their own cost goes up, everybody looks for, is it that they consume less, which will affect what the other guys have to offer.
Right.
So there is a contagion somewhere there. But that contagion is meant to be mild by all those non-VATable items. That's why we have them. Then number two is the fact that there is a gross distortion in our taxation system. And even if we don't take it now, that is why you saw that coming up in 2007 and coming up again in 2019, more than 10 years after. These are realities that we must face, that there is something wrong about our taxation, about our tax rate in its entirety that we need to review and
Tunji has
revisit.
summarized it. FIRS is unable to ask the big people for their money, so the only way around
They're
it is
trying to.
It doesn't look like they're trying to.
There was a VADES initiative. You remember that, the voluntary whatever.
Right,
there was
right.
a one that, the
Like,
Lien
just come
account.
forward, just pay.
And
we
it
give
led
you.
to 98 billion recovery. So there are initiatives, pocket of initiative here and there.
Why are we begging them to pay tax? I can't understand that part.
Everywhere in the world, nobody wants to pay tax.
Let's talk about the border before we go on a break.
Yes, now, as far as the border is concerned, my biggest worry is that it's taking too long to do whatever we need to do at the borders. What happens with that is that cartel will start developing. So the people that are meant to checkmate some people start getting in cahoot with them, and discussions and facilitation start to happen.
We had a call
And
on the
whole-
chit chat this morning
yes.
who said he stays at Tayobo and that from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. There's importation of rice
That's
from that end.
exactly
and they
what
are
I'm getting at.
escorted, according to him,
By the people who are supposed to stop them.
by people who are meant to stop them. So between 1 to 4 a.m. every night, and they are escorted. It even says about 4 a.m. they stop them.
We need
allow
to
this
understand
rice pass.
our society.
What?
That is the way it works. You want to get something done, you do it with that execution discipline and get out of the space. Once you
Right.
What
prolong
exactly
it,
are we trying to achieve with the border closure?
the government has invested a lot of effort and money in the rice initiative. It's been frustrated by what is going on at the borders. There is a genuine reason to want to see that people who have invested in the country,
And there are people.
and there are people, quite a lot. Even the CBN itself, do you know how much money it has put out there?
The Anchor Borrowers Program.
Yes. So whatever we can do to ensure that we don't allow those things to fail, we should do it. But
However,
we
while
have-
we're shutting out the rice, we're also shutting out other things. It's not just the rice.
We're shutting out a few other things. We're shutting out even our own products
You
that
know-
go to those other markets.
You know what? Let's go on a break. It's a big conversation, really, and we will come back, and have this conversation. We'll continue this conversation on border closure and its effects, plus, of course, the increase in VAT. It's almost like we're piling up issues upon issues upon issues. How this affect ordinary Nigerians and extraordinary Nigerians. We get to know after the
That's
break.
strange.
I'm Sheriff Quadry.
I'm Wemimo Adewuni. We'll be back shortly.
From your number one talk news and sports station. This is the Morning Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff. Welcome back to your number one talk news and sports station. This is Nigeria Info. Crossfire with Wemimo and Sheriff.
You are absolutely welcome back. It's the Morning Crossfire on 99.3 Nigeria Info, and we're looking at the proposed increment in VAT from 5% to 7.5%. We have two economists here with us in the studio, Gbolahan Olojede and Tunji Andrews, of course, who will be telling you more on money, business, and economy at 9. Let's talk about this idea, Tunji, that Nigerians should pay more VAT because the VAT in Nigeria is one of the lowest in Africa and in the world. So if countries are paying more, why can't we?
I mean, what is wrong with paying more?
Really?
The only issue here with paying more is like what I've explained. It's what we experience in Nigeria is a consumption tax named VAT. VAT is paid at final consumer point.
Yes, we have a sales tax.
No, we don't have a sales tax. That's the point.
So we only have VAT.
We only have VAT. So it transitioned. It transitioned from being a sales tax to being VAT. And if it were to be VAT as VAT, the only time you pay VAT is when you go to your restaurant or when you go to
the final consumer.
Yeah, the final consumer, your supermarket. But you notice that at every point where you issue an invoice in Nigeria, there's always VAT. So that's a general challenge with this, and that's why you can't completely compare it with other countries around the world.
But is it out of place to say other countries are paying more? We have to meet up with the times.
No. If it was solely VAT, as in you pay once, then it's not a problem. If some countries are as high as 20%,
25,
but you are paying once, not paying at multiple levels.
Let's break
increase.
it down further, Tunji. Value-added tax. Please explain to me. I'm confused. What are the values being added?
So generally, the thought behind it is that the every good that comes into the country or is produced in the country has gone through value addition over the period of time. So, for instance, something like you planted corn, it was in the ground, corn germinated,
so the
you
ground
then
belongs
processed
to the
it.
government.
Yes, it does, especially in
and
Nigeria.
The sand belonged to them, and
It does.
my fertilizer belonged to them.
Oh, wait! First of all, you don't know
the terrible road to my farm belonged to them.
Yeah, well.
And there's no storage
put it
facility
that
I
way.
pay for that.
But the thing is that it's expected that the infrastructure that allowed you to be able to process the food or whatever it is that the shoes, the clothes belongs to the government, and you have to pay for that, that infrastructure, quote unquote. And basically
which
is why
is not there.
Yeah, which is not there. Which of course is why it's added to the final goods and service, because it's assumed that this thing passed through a value chain, right? But the difference between it and a consumption tax, which of course is what we are practicing, a sales tax, which is what we are practicing, is that at every point it is a sales. So you pay something for the consumption of that particular sale. And that is what we're doing with our VAT. If, for instance, the FIRS were to make it clear that you only pay VAT at the final point of sale, which is at the supermarket, the restaurant, then I'm not sure a lot of people will have issues with this particular sales.
But do we even pay at that level?
Which
final
level?
goods.
At the supermarket level.
Oh, yes,
well, the
we
bigger
pay.
ones we do. There's some
On
smaller. There are some smaller mom and pop shops that, of course, you don't get.
So
to
the
pay.
argument against this is to say if most of the VAT we pay for the final consumer is done at the malls, at the supermarket. So maybe more people will go patronize the informal sector,
Naturally.
So if instead of buying in the store and paying VAT, I'll just go to the open market. In fact, the first time we had this chat, many of our listeners on Chicha said those people who go to malls are lazy. Just go to the market and buy it, and you don't have to give VAT.
It's probably even cheaper to go to the supermarkets. Anyways, what I wanted to say was it's also pretty much like the VAT that is supposed to be placed on online purchases also.
Which
It's
is where
the
I was
same
coming.
thinking.
Right.
It's the same thinking to it. What you will do is that you will just make people avoid those areas, because if they think about it and they say, "Oh, I'm going to pay 7.5," have you gone grocery shopping recently?
No.
So before the devaluation, the last devaluation we had, grocery shopping for my home. I'm talking about grocery shopping that you're going through every aisle and you're thinking
Right.
to yourself, oh,
Right.
what does this thing do? Oh,
What is it for?
what is it for? Yeah, put it in the basket. We're checking at home.
We'll try it.
You know, and you know, you get home and you find out that you get to the teller, you find out that you're paying like maybe 27,000, and that's for the entire month. Now, I'm avoiding aisles, and it's closer to 100,000.
Oh wow.
Wow.
It's closer to 100, and you're avoiding aisles. You're like, nah, we
No,
have
you're not
that.
cherry picking.
We
We don't need that one.
So you get- so you kind of feel that the weight is getting heavier on the average Nigerian, and they are beginning to think to themselves, how can I cut corners, and how can I not cut corners, how can I save money, you know, on consumption. And VAT right now comes to a lot of people's minds.
And now that we're there, what are the effects of this? Well, please, you respond to this as well. Tunji, let me begin with you. If this pulls through in 2020, what will be the likely effect of this on Nigerians?
I think the first point where I've not wanted to say for a while, but I think it must be said, is that kerosene will increase. The price of kerosene would increase. You know, kerosene is fully deregulated.
And I hear the price has been increased by NNPC. I mean, irregularly over.
Well, no.
And
you know,
marketers are even unable to get their
NNPC
supply.
tries to sell their own stock at a lower price so that Nigerians can get it cheaper, but it is fully deregulated, so anybody can bring it at any price. It doesn't really concern anybody. Now, NNPC has a it doesn't have as much stock, and the guys that are bringing it at whatever price have so much. So it's those people you can really get.
They
it from.
determine the price.
Yeah, so it will increase slightly. And you know, kerosene is one of our most used fuels in terms of cooking across Nigeria,
Right.
especially with the lower rungs of the society. That for me is a challenge. There will be some foods that will increase in price. Of course, you won't pay it on your gari and your rice and your beans, but of course, those are not the only things you buy. You still buy some other processed additions to your food. So it won't really be a major effect on the Nigerians. Neither will it be a major effect on the government's revenue.
Right.
So the question I'm asking here is, why are we doing this?
If it's not having any major effects on the government, why are we going through this?
Do you share that sentiment?
I don't think it will have a major effect. I've seen the figures, 2 trillion. It's a projection. In the real sense, when you go to the historical performance of VAT collections, you can estimate that if things, what they call ceteris paribus, it will be less than 500 billion that we'll make from the money.
Oh wow.
And
Yes.
the 500
Wow.
billion
So-
is going to be split by 3 tiers of government.
At the end of it, there may be a state to get 10 billion additional.
This is how the money is split. The federal government retains only 15%
Well,
of that.
as I said.
85% is actually for state and local government, meaning that the federal government will be receiving proposed aggregate of 4.26 trillion naira.
No. See, City of Lagos, I need you to do this. The government is always very bullish about projections. Always. They've never been.
They want to go the farthest. They
You
want
know,
to-
so we've always said, 2.2 billion barrels of oil per day. We've never done it.
And why do we keep? Why do we maintain that
never-
2.2? Never.
Well, like I said, we're always bullish. We've never done it. But so this estimation of, it's going to add 2 trillion naira to
Remember
it's an
that
illusion.
more people would run away from buying those items, so fewer people will be paying VAT.
Yeah,
by what we've been doing before is 484 billion.
That's what I'm
Boom.
saying.
End of story.
However this panned out, we need to have at the back of our mind as Nigerians, and I think the policymakers as well need to do a lot more. There's a broken trust. People don't
Yeah.
think that when they
Right.
pay the tax, it will be applied to where it's supposed to be applied to. So they don't want to pay. But in the long run, I would think in the medium run, we will need to pay more taxes. And one figure I will leave us with is the fact that this same VAT in South Africa generates over 10 trillion, about 9 point something trillion, equivalent naira. That amount is more than our entire revenue. Oil, custom duty, taxes, corporate income, all of them put together is just about 7 trillion. If it generates 9 trillion, VAT alone, generate 9 trillion in South Africa of 60 million people, it should get us thinking that somewhere along the line, we must reform the entire tax system to make it
Wouldn't that-
more effective. Look,
Right.
look also at
And
the one
then
that
use the tax for what it should be used for. I'm not sure Nigerians mind paying more tax if they can see what it's being
You're
used
going to be
for.
paying more for power.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
power consumption.
is the only
is-
way to actually get power.
You know, it scares me.
What was that?
Yeah, yeah. VAT, you're going to pay more now.
Oh, of course.
Say
Of
that again.
course.
Say that again.
Yes, for power, you're going to pay more now.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I hope you guys got that.
We're getting, we're getting. So it scares me, gentlemen, because we're at that juncture right now. There is a proposal to increase transaction online. There is a proposal to increase VAT. There is border closure. All of these things will have effect on who again? Who?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Well, the border closure, this is not the first time. We do it periodically. It happens from time to time. I'm just at the point where I feel we don't understand that Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement we signed.
we can't be closing our borders.
Yes,
we can't.
cannot.
We can't. You
Yeah,
can't just wake up and
we
say,
don't-
"I
we
don't
don't-
like your
we don't
face
get it.
anymore."
We don't get
but
it,
we
right?
signed that.
We don't get it. I think we don't get it, but
We just signed.
we eventually will get it. We eventually will get it. But I think
Tunji, that's very important. I mean, we signed an agreement that says there's free trade, and then
Yeah.
you close your borders.
But the free trade has its terms. And if there are goods that are not permitted, for example, goods that are manufactured in those countries can come here, but you cannot go and import rice from Thailand and bring it here.
Right.
Even under that trade agreement, we can stop that particular.
Right.
But even the problem with that is, how do you know it came from Thailand?
Where it's from.
Because I can bring it into Nigeria,
Repackage.
it.
Yeah.
And you know how well we
which
repackage.
is what's
yeah.
been done according to we had this conversation some time ago, and a dealer said that it's what importers do. They bring this imported rice into the country and rebag them.
You want people to stop
Made in
buying.
Nigeria.
You want people to stop buying foreign rice? Make the rice in Nigeria cheaper.
Oh,
Nobody wants
simple.
to buy more expensive rice anywhere. These things are simple laws of economics,
isn't it-
supply and demand.
Thank
Wherever supply is cheaper,
You want to get rice in Nigeria to be cheap. How are you going to do it?
Uh-huh.
exactly
The
value chain is
factors
that one
of production across the entire value chain.
are deficient. Isn't that why we're paying VAT to make
So
it?
haven't we just
efficient?
gone a full cycle? I mean, a
You know, the
merry-go-round.
last time we spoke about it, I said we must even define how much rice do we consume in Nigeria.
Right. How much do we
much of
need?
it are
Are
we
we producing?
What is the gap?
Remember
and how
we
do
did-
we intend to fill that
We did
gap?
the same thing when the CBN said they were going to ban forex
Milk.
for the importation of milk.
Right.
The idea was to grow local production, and I'm wondering, this is just basic
No.
economics.
Do you know the funny thing about that milk? If you look at CBN's importation list
It's
and
a
you look
tiny
at milk,
amount.
it's a very
It's not something to bother
I
with
didn't understand
at
why
all.
we made so much noise about it. So
Well, we'll go to the phone lines shortly. Let's remind you that Lagos, FCT, Rivers, Kano, and Kaduna generate 87% of VAT revenue, and they share also a big chunk of that revenue, meaning that financially disadvantaged states will be getting less from the VAT increment. And also, there are items that are exempted from these VATs, and they include medical and pharmaceutical products, basic food items, books and educational materials, newspapers and magazines, baby products, commercial vehicles and their spare parts, agricultural equipment and products, veterinary medicine. These items are not to be VATed. So how will this affect you? You can join us right now. We have messages also on Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp is 08095975805. And here are the phone numbers.
Call us on 01-277-0993, 01-277-1993, 01-277-2993, and 01-277-3993. This is Nigeria Info. We are listening.
This is Nigeria Info. We are listening. Welcome to the show.
That's
Kayode.
right. Let's speak with Coyote from Ikotun. Coyote, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning. A quick one, and I just want to shed light on one or two things. Now, firstly, the reason FIRS said their revenue, their collection dropped is because a lot of companies folded up.
No.
And hold on, please, hold on. This VAT they're talking about, because a lot of times I heard you talking about non-vatable items. Even when you say some items are non-vatable, it's very funny because Nigerian tax system is very inefficient. Because when you say I can't VAT the final output, but there are a lot of services I pay for in between that I pay VAT on. And when I'm about to fix my price, I'm going to use that to determine my final price.
Yeah.
So eventually the consumer is paying for that VAT, whether you like it or not. So even petroleum products, I'm telling you, even when you say petroleum products and food and all these things are not VATed, when you pay, there's some fees you're supposed to pay in between that you pay VAT on. And then there is no how that the final consumer is not getting the total of it.
It will be
And
spread out on other
it's going to
goods.
determine the final price.
Right.
Now,
right.
let me tell you the way like this Nigerian tax
Kaide,
works.
quickly, please.
Yes, sorry. Let me tell you, is that the government wants to eat the cake and have it. They want the companies to bear the VAT. They also want to collect it from the final consumer.
Abi?
Because a lot of times when you tell them, when you verify your account, I'm a chartered accountant, I'm telling you this, when you verify your account and you give them a lot of things that you put that they're not supposed to VAT, they want you to be the final consumer of that product.
All right.
Because, for instance,
Kaide, we need to wrap it up. There are so many people
Kaide,
on the
we
line.
need to go now.
Please bear with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Chichi is from Surulere. Chichi, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So, quickly, I like how you before you went to announce your numbers for the calls, you listed the items that are meant to be VATed and other items that are supposed to be VATed. But the thing is that you go to shops in Nigeria and everybody's collecting VAT. You go to a store to buy a dress and you see your receipt, there's VAT on it. You go to the supermarket, there's VAT. You go to an ice cream place, there's VAT. Everybody in Nigeria takes VAT. So how do you now enforce who is going to be collecting VAT and who is going to be collecting VAT? Yeah, and that is just one. Over the weekend, I went to a restaurant in Lagos on the island, and I was VATed twice. There was a Lagos State VAT, and there was a general VAT. So I ended up paying 10%, then still paid service charge. So how do you control people like this already extorting people in the name of value-added tax? Why would I be paying a Lagos State VAT?
Is there a Lagos State VAT?
Yes,
I don't know.
there's no, it's not a Lagos State VAT. It's a Lagos State consumption tax.
So isn't that double taxation already?
Not exactly.
Why not?
One goes to FIRS, one goes to LIRS.
And the one that goes to the FIRS is also split.
Why should I pay taxes?
The state government takes a part of that same VAT. So why they?
Chichi, thank you so much for bringing this to the fore.
By the way, Chichi.
No, it's not. It's not new. We know it.
Yeah, but is it right?
It is now.
Why? How?
So wait. That's why at the beginning we're trying to explain the difference between the consumption tax and why I said the FIRS needs to make what VAT is clear, because as it is, right, it operates like a consumption tax. It is not a consumption tax. It is not supposed to be a consumption tax.
But let me get this clearly. So the VAT collected by FIRS, which should be VAT, but behaves like a consumption tax, is split between the federal government. Wait, 1 minute. So the state governments get 85% of that money, yet they still collect their own states.
Yes.
Why should that be?
Why?
Well,
You're collecting from the federal, and you still want to collect another tax.
No.
You said it's a complicated thing.
The one
but
they collect
let's
in Lagos State is not called Lagos State VAT.
What is it called?
It's called.
I think was it hospitality or
hospitality tax. Yeah. So it's a consumption
let's
tax.
speak with Adekunle from Ajawo Estate. It's been on the line for a while. Adekunle, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Wemimo.
Good morning.
I've been listening to the explanation that if you are giving there regarding payment of VAT and the rest. To be honest, if not for the place where I'm working, that the government in one way or the other gets tax directly from my employer, I won't pay. Because I've been in traffic now. I've been in traffic now for more than 2 hours, just from Ejigbo to Lake Airport Road. Okay, we have bad roads. The one we pay, what have they done with it? We have senators that go home with 36 or 38,000 naira every million naira every month. The governor of them collects money. You see politicians are spending money anyhow without no make use of it in the way that it should be.
See?
If they are spending the money on what it should be, maybe on the road, education, health, everything, people can even pay more. For instance, I buy fuel 500 naira every day, just to power out my gen. So, and that's
just for a few hours in a day, maybe 3 hours in the evening.
Okay, that is in the evening. I will not even leave it overnight, maybe by 12 I copy. Okay, so if all this money that we spend or something, if they have been making use of the money in the right way, people will pay more.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's head over to Facebook. Adeyanju Adetuji here says, if you want more, we should be able to pay more. Nigeria pays the least in the world. On border closure, we cannot reduce unemployment if you allow all sorts into the country. Omotayo Olubukola says, I think Mr. Fowler should have looked into pursuing those not in the tax net rather than increase VAT. Well, Fowler didn't increase VAT, okay? Increase minimum wage. Let's just get that on the table. Ayodele Ayola here says, good morning, Wemimo, Sheriff and the guest. The VAT issue is a concluding issue as far as the federal government is concerned. They're only waiting for execution. However, it looks like the Senate is not agreeing with this, so it will still need to go through the Senate.
Yeah.
Like,
Come on,
like,
gentlemen.
Yeah.
The VAT Act would need to be amended.
Meanwhile, please note that not paying taxes is actually illegal.
It's
Criminal.
a crime. It is a crime.
So please don't say that you won't pay.
You don't even have a choice about this one. Good
That's
morning.
right. Tell me something. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the
My name
show.
is Tokwe from
Well,
Aja.
welcome.
I'm a chartered accountant. I'm not a tax professional.
Oh,
nice.
fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah. The issue of increase in VAT rates, I want to believe, is a right action coming at a very wrong time. Presently, we have so many tax laws in the Tax Act. We have conflict on Tax Act. We have a petroleum profit tax act and the like. In Nigeria today, it's only white-collar jobs people that are paying tax. There are so many people out there that are not paying tax. So what am I saying in essence? Instead of increasing the tax rate, you people should work towards broadening the tax base. The tax base should be broadened so that those people outside the tax net could be brought in.
Exactly.
Right. The informal sector, which Tunji is very wary of us taxing.
Right.
Ola is here from Oniko. Ola, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Welcome to the show.
Okay,
Please take
just-
30 seconds.
Okay, just to clarify that what we have in Nigeria is actually VAT, but like you said, it looks like a sales tax. The rate that we're using now, some items, for you to deduct, ordinarily for VAT, you have what we call output VAT and input VAT. So it is not like you pay VAT at every stage. It is the final
Difference.
consumer that still bears.
Yeah,
the
that's
VAT.
what we should have.
Yes, so but in
That's
some,
what we
in some
have.
instance, we still have it because at various stages, when you pay VAT, it is passed on to the person. When you charge VAT at 5%, and then you sell, the VAT you pay, you deduct it from the one you are going to collect. So at the end of the day, it is only one level of VAT
Okay.
that goes to the federal government,
Okay.
and that is what we still have. It is just that it is not on all transactions that you have that VAT being passed on. For example, if you are into servicing, you are, for the input VAT to be deducted, you must be either into buy and selling or into manufacturing for resale.
All right.
Any other one, you cannot deduct your input. So what we are saying is that if we have that complete VAT system where you can deduct your input from your property, from your asset, then the rate can go up higher.
Okay.
Right,
The
thank
way
you.
it
All
is
right.
now,
Yeah.
that is why the rate is that small.
All right, Ola. Thank you.
Thank
Ola,
you.
for
Let's
calling.
squeeze in a few comments from WhatsApp. This person, okay, Chike from Ebute Meta is following us back to back with comment on, I think, every sentence that we speak. He says, let me take the last one. Said, Tunji, you are too much. Which Senate? The rubber stamp one. Let me just take that one and move on to Chinedu Ene from Idumota says, government only trying to increase the VAT in order to have more to loot. Stopping rice importation where you're not efficient in production of rice is just to empower the smugglers because they would finally find their way into the country. Ajayi Olabade on WhatsApp says, why should I pay tax when I practically provide my electricity, security and water? Even my car is damaged by the bad roads. If the little that is paid is utilized, we wouldn't bother about an increment. Can we take a final one from this? Chike again. No, I'm done with you. Okay. And Olayinka says, when the current tax is properly used by government, they will pay more.
Right.
All right, Nigeria, we tried getting FIRS here in the studio. We hope to have them in very soon because we need to ask them all the questions about tax, not just VAT, tax payment and its utilization across the country. We must thank both economists who have joined us on the show today. Tunji Andrews will just step aside a bit. He'll be back right after the news with money, business and economy. Ask him all the other questions up there. And Gbolahan Olojede has been here with us since the front pages. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Nigeria, let's keep talking on social media at Nigeria Info FM. You can reach us also on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere. You can find us there. I am Wemimo Adewuni.
I'm Sheriff Quadry.
And we'll see you again tomorrow.